Welcome to the Undercovers football podcast. I'm Ben along with Paul and Connor, and tonight we have a very loaded show between some interesting topics at the NFL owners meeting. And then we've had some more Bills news this week, some actual news that a lot of us have been waiting for. So we'll get into that momentarily, as well as obviously draft talk. We each have a 7-round mock draft that we're going to kind of compare. And then I guess maybe we can even do a poll afterwards, on Twitter, just whose mock was the best, and you can give feedback or whatever. But guys, the owners meeting, let's just start getting right into the quick take because it's something that's been very controversial. Now, obviously, Green Bay was the one who proposed the tush push ban, and quickly, before I get into my quick take, actually, again, the Bills were 1 year too late from this rule being in place, but they'll finally have electronic measurements for first down lines. And obviously, we all
Yeah.
know that it's a season too late. And
Mhm.
ironically, it does have to do what I'm about to be talking about, which is the tush push. And Green Bay proposed the ban. There's other teams who supported it, but it doesn't look like it has the support it needs for the ban to go into place. And we had some interesting comments from Sean McDermott. I know he's obviously on the rules committee, so he does have a lot of input to this type of stuff. He said it should go for player safety, but it's interesting because the Bills are one of the teams that utilizes it the most.
Yeah. Mhm.
Now, I forget which coach exactly said this. No, it was Mike Vrabel, I believe, right? He's the one who said that if you're going to ban a successful play like the tush push, you may as well ban Lamar Jackson running, which I guess is an interesting analogy. Just basically, just because a play works doesn't mean it should be illegal. Now,
Mhm.
a lot of people dislike the tush push, but I actually personally am a big fan of the tush push. And maybe McDermott, because he wasn't successful as much with it. I mean, if the Bills made the Super Bowl because of the tush push, does
Oh,
McDermott have those comments this past week? I'm not sure, but
probably not.
it is an interesting angle that he wants it banned after we did fail at it
Mhm.
multiple times in the playoffs. But to me personally, again, I'm a fan of the tush push. I, you know, not everyone can do it, as we've seen in the championship game, even though the Bills were very successful. Kansas City, it seemed like, had our tendencies down, so they would always just plug the gap that Allen was trying to rush to, which for some reason he always decided to go left, didn't switch it up with the right. But Jalen
Mhm.
Hurts can squat something like 800 pounds or something
Yeah.
ridiculous like
Mhm.
that. So his lower body leg drive is insane, which makes his tush push so unguardable. I mean, remember that NFC Championship game? Washington was trying everything and anything to stop them. The referees even threatened to allow an automatic
Oh,
Yeah.
touchdown
that was
if
Mhm.
funny.
which
That was
I
so
don't know if
funny.
I've ever heard of such a rule, but maybe it exists. But that, I mean, we got some quality memes out
Mhm.
of it. But yes, just quickly to summarize this quick take, I don't think you should ban the tush push. Maybe if more injuries were to come out of it, it's a different discussion. But I mean, we've seen Patrick Mahomes get hurt on a simple quarterback sneak, so I
Mhm.
think it's just depend. I mean, you can get hurt on obviously any play. Tank
Mhm.
Dell had a couple freak injuries in the end zone, and even more interesting, I guess, is the conversation is what's going to happen to defense now that touchbacks are going to be moved. They went from a 1 point, I
Yeah.
believe they were the 20 about 5+ years ago. Then they moved to the 25 to match college. This past season, they were at the 30-yard line, and now they're going to the 35-yard line. So, I mean, if you got a good kicker and you're in a dome or ideal conditions, you basically just need one first down
Mhm.
to move into scoring distance now, which is, I don't know, like, for Connor, the whole defense wins championship guys, which I echo that sentiment myself.
Right.
It it is gonna kind of change the game. I know fans with all this fantasy and betting, people just want more scoring in general. But honestly, the one takeaway I have from that, and Connor might appreciate this because he played this position in high school, it might actually mean that special teams are finally truly 1/3 of the phases of football, because usually it's offense, defense, or vice versa, and then special teams, which is almost like way more than a
Mhm.
third of the phases. But now that this kickoff rule is going to be in place, you think that
Mhm.
are going to be trying to kick it shorter to prevent touchbacks, and this will lead to more returns. And I mean, I didn't mind the new return rules last year. I thought there were
Mhm.
more returns in general. I mean, there were some scores too. Like, it is kind of goofy how the kicker lines up so much behind, so much farther behind the rest of the special teams, but it almost is more like an offensive play now with how the blockers are set up. So, I mean, I'm sure now even more so that we're in year 2 of the rule, that we'll see some interesting stuff with this new kickoff. But yeah, back to the main point of the quick take. I don't think the NFL needs to stop the tush push. Um I think teams need to get better defending it, and I think it goes back to like the Bills. They need more beef on the defensive interior. If you had a guy like a prime Linval Joseph type, obviously not what we saw from him in Buffalo, even though a good stat from cover one, if you look at the Bills run defense with Linval Joseph on the field versus without him, he still drastically improved the run defense. But if you have a prime Linval Joseph, just an absolute tank in the middle of the D line, like he's pushing back the center and the quarterback.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh, you got that
I
right.
I mean, you go back to the tush push here. I feel like the McDermott saying this, that the tush push should be stopped, is very confusing to me, because the Bills, again, just was so successful with it last year.
Right.
They ran
No,
it. They had
100%.
35 plays
Mhm.
with it in 2024. They had 35 plays, 29 first downs, 7 touchdowns off the tush push. They had an 82.9% conversion rate with the tush push. But you go back to the AFC Championship game, that went from 82.9% to 33%, because how often the Bills ran it and how predictable it was. So if you bring the tush push back, I feel like the Bills would integrate it back into their system, because I feel like this is a Joe Brady specialty, that he knows how to run this play. Get a little bit creative with it. Obviously tell Josh to go to the right a little bit more, and go to the left a little bit, and then you can still go to the left, but switch it up, go to the right. Get some more big beefier guys on your offensive line, maybe, and go to the right a little bit more. Maybe you find some sort of creative way to get the tush push to be less predictable for your offense, because it worked for the Bills last year. It was one of the best plays that the Bills had when it was third and short, fourth and short, whether it's just to get a first down or get a touchdown. It was a play it that was one of the best plays in the Bills playbook. So I get it that, there's a potential risk for injury, but Roger Goodell says, there's very limited data on injuries on the tush push. So if there's limited data on it, why go out and just try to ban it when
Mhm.
there's really just no real argument to ban it? If it's not broken, don't fix it.
Well, yeah, just for one, get a defensive line that can actually stop it, a bunch of big dudes right on the front, or get an offensive line that can actually help your quarterback do it a whole lot better. And there's just certain teams in the league that are not going to be able to do it
Well, and
as
there's
good as anybody else. Looking
right
right at
for
you, Miami.
I was just gonna say, for example, do you really want Tua diving headfirst, especially behind Aaron Brewer, who's an
No, because
undersized center to begin with?
he's going to get crushed.
Let's move on to our next quick
Mhm.
take.
And this
Connor
one's
has an
oh yeah,
interesting quick take, so go ahead, Connor.
oh yeah,
So
because I've been at the forefront of this discussion many, many times. So the take that I was given was really interesting. Is taking the home field advantage away from division winners the right way to change the playoff format? Now, let me be frank to start. No. you are literally ruining the idea of winning a division. If you win a division, and yeah, maybe your division wasn't that good. Let's go back to 2020, back when it was the NFC East was complete garbage. The entire division was just absolutely unwatchable. Like it wasn't even worthy to put them in the playoffs that year because they were all just so bad. At the end of the day, if you don't have a team in that division winning the division itself, then what's the point of them even playing the games? Because none of them are making the playoffs. That Washington team that won the division that year, I think they won it at 7-9. They weren't going to make the playoffs if it wasn't for winning the division. And at the it just doesn't make any sense.
See,
Winning the division needs to be something that actually has meaning. And if you win a division, but you're still seated really, really low and you don't reap the reward from winning the division, then what's the point? I feel like you've got to keep it the way that it is because you need to keep division championships relevant. It's like look at the Bills, right? Look how many times we've won the AFC East consistently, like back to back, right? It's like what? Been 5
5 straight
years,
years.
6 years? Yeah. I mean, that needs to mean something. And it does because we have the ability to host a home playoff game at the beginning of the year if we play or at the beginning of the playoffs in the wild card round. But I mean, hey, when we get that number 1 seed, that first one in the Josh Allen era, that'll be the best. But anyway, we need to make sure that the divisions mean something. You got to reap the reward of winning a division. And if that means a home playoff game despite the fact that you maybe are a 7-9 team and the teams below you have 12, maybe even 13 wins, very unlikely for a 13-win team to be a wild card, but we saw it last season. Pretty sure the Vikings were 14-3 in the wild card round. Didn't help. They got bodied by the Rams, but at the end of the day, winning a division has to have value. And if you put them lower down the playoff seeds and you force them to go on the road, then it no longer matters. It's like, cool, you won a division, you still have to go on the road. And I think the best way to close the take is to literally say if you want to fix the playoffs, revert it back to what it was before you added that 7th seed. Get rid of the 7th seed, make it 6 seeds again, give the first 2 seeds a bye. And then if you go back and you look at history, how it would have looked, the Bills would have had a first round bye out of the wild card round pretty much every one of those years that they've
Mhm.
won the AFC East because they've been the 2nd seed. It would have
yeah, I
been
think it was
nice.
every year but 2021
And that
that
was
they
when they
didn't.
were the 3rd seed, if I remember
Correct,
right.
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, so they would have been in the wild card round under the old format that year. They would have hosted whoever 6 was. But that's the best way I have to finish off that take because it's talking about the playoffs. Just go back to 6 seeds, first 2 top 2 seeds get buys. Problem solved. Now let's actually move on to our Bills takes cuz man, do we have good news to share on this one.
100%. And real quickly, it's kind of like an interesting debate. I feel like maybe what you could do to tweak it, because like you said, Minnesota at 14 wins, it's hard to say they didn't deserve a home playoff game. It's just they were in a loaded division. Maybe you could do it kind of like, um, I know in hockey it's by record, right? So even if you win your division, you're not guaranteed a home playoff game, right? But you still, the top three seeds from each division
Mhm.
automatically qualify. So you could have it maybe kind of similar to that, where you qualify, but you're not guaranteed a home playoff game, and then
Mhm.
it's by record. But still, you're gonna have people crying about, oh, what's the point of the divisions? Well, obviously they're for the games, and to play your schedule, but if you win your division, you're guaranteed a home playoff game. So yeah, it's an interesting topic. But yes, Bills news. The Bills finally were able to reach an extension with Christian Benford. And I think if you would have asked any one of us what that contract would have looked like, we probably all would have said at least 20 million a year, considering
Mhm.
Mhm.
what the rest of the quarterback market already got this season between obviously Stingley with the big payday getting, what was it, 90 million a year for 3 years. There's
Yeah.
other guys
Yeah.
who got well over 20 million. So, I mean, if I can just quickly um pull up the cornerback salaries on over the cap, Benford would come in, I believe, as the 14th ranked corner in
Yeah,
terms
something
of
like that.
AAV. You know, you obviously JC Horn signed for 25 million a year. Let me see who else. Anyone? No one else really re-signed. So he basically got the Jalen Johnson contract, I believe. What was it?
Mhm.
4 years, 76 million. And Johnson
Mhm.
signed last year. And you always know the next person up should reset the market, except Benford did not reset the market. He got a very fair deal, which was like Bean did to every other one of his free agents this past off season, locking him up as the Bills' #1 corner for the next, I believe it was a 4-year extension. So it's
Mhm.
going to be this year, 4 more years after that. So we have our cornerback one of the future
Mhm.
paid. We have obviously Rousseau paid, Shakir paid, and Bernard paid. The only one who's not paid is James Cook. And with this extension,
Oh man.
does this push Cook out of Buffalo? Now, Bean had some interesting comments at the owners' meeting, but you also know how Bean operates. He never really likes to reveal his cards. So
Nope.
I don't think it necessarily means it's the end of Cook in Buffalo, but I would say Cook should probably count his days. And um
Mhm.
I'm not going to put it off the table that he gets an extension, because the Bills do have money, and the fact that they're able to get such good deals on all these other players, I think it would increase the likelihood that Cook does resign, which I would probably put it at like maybe like a 40-60, maybe 60. He doesn't resign, but I mean, he obviously knows the system in Buffalo. He's a good fit for the system in Buffalo, and we're a winning team. If he wants a chance to win a ring, it's obviously his best chances in Buffalo, especially
Mhm.
behind this O line. And he doesn't have to have the wear and tear that other backs have by being an every down back. So
Yep.
I'm inclined to think that Cook still could potentially come back on a reasonable deal. Obviously, I don't think it'll be 15 million, but if he does say, "Hey, I'll take maybe 11 or 12, potentially 13 with incentives," I think maybe that could work for like a 3-year deal. Not something super long, but you know, we still have a bunch of guys on rookie deals, and I still don't think, even if you find a stud rookie back, I don't think in year 1 or even year 2 he's going to be as effective as James Cook has been the last couple of seasons. So me personally, I get where people come from with the cap situation, don't pay running backs, but I don't see a scenario where we find a replacement that's as good as James Cook immediately. Maybe eventually they're an upgrade in terms of pass catching, blocking. Maybe they're a little more explosive or something, even though Cook is pretty damn explosive himself. But I don't see a world where Cook, or getting rid of Cook, leads to us having a better offense. I think we need as many weapons for Josh as possible. And for someone who's one of the best players on the team last year, I don't see a benefit in getting rid of him.
Mhm. I am right there with you. I feel like
Mhm.
you and I are probably one of the only few that are going to actually be on this page of keeping James Cook at all costs, but I think I may have a very different outlook on it than you, Ben. And the outlook that I have on it is that I actually think that James Cook doing what he did in the Bills offense last year is what made it so good. The fact that they were able to run the ball consistently, and that James Cook was the reason that they were able to run the ball consistently because of how good he is why the offense was humming and putting up record numbers throughout the course of the season, because they didn't have to worry about Josh Allen throwing 40, 35, 40 times a game. Now they run the ball efficiently, they burn the clock, they keep the other team's offense off the field, and at that point, you're winning games. You are controlling the clock. You are managing. You're pretty much game managing. I know, obviously, MVP Josh Allen ain't a game manager, but man, the Bills' offense last year somewhat made him look like one with how well James Cook was able to run the ball and keep the opposing defenses off the field. I feel like if you were to get rid of him, you aren't going to be able to replace that kind of ability and that kind of skill set in an offense that easily. I mean, yeah, you can draft a running back. We saw how good Ty Johnson was, and we saw how good Ray Davis was. Ray Davis has potential. He's definitely going to be good in the offense. But do you really think that if you had a running back room of Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, and someone that you drafted, that you're going to make up for the hole that James Cook leaves? I don't think so. I think that you need to keep him, but if it gets too unrealistic, then you have no choice but to get rid of him, because if he's demanding something ridiculous like 15 million a year, oh yeah, no way. You can't give him that kind of money.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure if you gave him 15 million a year, that would be close to Saquon Barkley's contract before it was extended. Like, there ain't no way I would want to give him Saquon money when he's nowhere not close to Saquon Barkley. I'm just being completely honest. But I will advocate to keep James Cook first. But the idea that he didn't get an extension is interesting. I feel like if he wants to, he could. He might go. I don't think he's actually going to go the diva route. Like how Le'Veon Bell was
Mhm.
back with the Steelers in 2018, where he literally sat out regular season games because he was upset that he wasn't getting paid what he
No.
thought he was worth. I don't think James Cook would do that. I think James Cook has a lot more class than that. So I think maybe they're going to shelf this talk, because that's what I've been seeing, is that they're going to shelf the talks and they're going to wait until next offseason to figure out what they want to do with James Cook. And I think that's actually the smartest move they can make right now, especially if they aren't getting anywhere. And especially with how public James Cook has been with his contract dispute, that's probably a reason why he hasn't been paid and the rest of them have.
Mhm.
But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, keep James Cook, but
The
keep
thing
him
with James
reasonably.
Cook, I think he knows his worth, but he also knows that Bean probably won't come off the number that he's set at. Look at all the other contracts, Shakir, Bernard, Benford. I mean, all those numbers could have been way much higher, because you look
Hmm.
at cap sites, the numbers for those contracts for average for an average value was way higher than what all three of those guys signed. And I think Cook knows that, and he's like, well, right now I feel like my worth is this, which is 15.
Hmm.
But Brandon Bean might say your worth is to us is 12 or 13. And with another year left on his deal, Cook has a chance to prove why he's worth $15 million. If he goes out and has another 15, 16 touchdown season, okay, maybe now you have back to back, you know, 20 to almost 20 touchdown seasons, and you have maybe your third straight consecutive 1,000-yard year. Okay, maybe spending $15 million on James Cook maybe for the next, 3-ish years would be actually worth spending on. But say he has a decline year, in a year that where he's trying to find his worth, keeping James Cook on a more contract friendly deal might be better for the Buffalo Bills and Brandon Bean. And if Cook thinks otherwise, he just hits the market. So I think that's where the current market stands on the Bills and Cook, where it might, we might get surprised right around OTAs. You get the James Cook, extension, or this drags out towards training camp. Maybe around there they reconvene and re-talk about it, and then there's a deal done. But if none of those two things happen, I think this is a prove it type situation with Cook. And if Cook hits the market, he's still seeing the number that he doesn't like. Bean always says you can always just come back and sign the number that we have for you. And we've seen that in the past. The earliest,
Hmm.
the closest example right now would probably be when we signed Jordan Poyer for that extra year. He went out, tested the market. He was left unsigned for a while, and came back and then signed that 1-year extension. Now, I want to go back to Benford really quick before we head into one last Bills topic. I mean, Benford is the perfect example of draft and retain. I
Mhm.
mean, you look at that and really that entire class. If the Bills are able to bring back James Cook, that was the draft of Khalil Shakir, Christian Benford, and James Cook. That 2022 draft class could potentially be one of the better draft classes under Brandon Beane because draft and retain. You drafted 3 really good guys, and now they're all potentially to be the core of your team. And then Christian Benford is obviously you bring back your cornerback one. I mean, on deep throws last over the last few years, he hasn't allowed a single deep throw against him. He has 2 interceptions on balls over 20 plus yards, and then again, second fewest yards per targets, second best coverage grade. I mean, this guy was a 5th-round pick out of Villanova,
Mhm.
where he probably wasn't even in half of the team's
Sixth
boards.
pick, actually.
6th-round pick. Okay. 6th-round pick out of Villanova. And guess he probably wasn't on a lot of teams' boards. Bean
Mhm.
says, your college resume looks good enough. Can you take it from the FCS level to the NFL level? And Benford defeated the odds, and now he's cornerback one in
Mhm.
the Buffalo Bills. So I think that's perfect for Brandon Beane, and that
Oh
2022
yeah.
draft class has potential to be one of the better ones. Any final thoughts on Benford and Cook before we head into our final
I will
Bills?
tell you one thing. It will most likely not happen. But you know what wouldn't shock me if it still happened? You get a notification during the NFL draft that the Bills found a trade partner for James Cook because they just got
No, no,
fed
no, no,
up
no,
with it
no.
and they couldn't deal with it
Mm-mm.
anymore. I mean,
Okay, no.
it won't happen. I really
No.
don't think it will. But if it did, I would not be shocked because I feel like there is a
Connor, you
group.
spent this entire time talking about why the Bills should
Yes,
retain James Cook, and now you're
yes.
thinking about potential trade partners for him.
Listen, Paul. I do this all the time. It is why I'm good at this ball talk stuff here because I can see both sides to the argument. Now, listen.
All right.
Do you remember? I mean, there are a lot of GMs that I'm sure remember the whole Le'Veon Bell and Pittsburgh Steelers saga,
Right.
where they tried their hardest to pay him what they thought he was worth. Bell thought he was worth more, and they couldn't reach a conclusion. So Bell took it the wrong way. He sat out an entire season, and went complete diva. Part of me wonders if Bean looks back at this and sees this whole saga. Now, granted, James Cook is not Le'Veon Bell, but part of me still wonders if there is like a little bit of Bean that's like, I don't even want to think an iota about dealing with something similar. And if they see that it's not going to work out and they figure a way to get him out, they get him out. I don't think it would happen that way because I doubt James Cook would be the guy to really, be like Le'Veon Bell in terms of full blown diva. But I'm just saying it wouldn't shock me if they found a trade partner and then like a couple of weeks later it comes out and something comes out of the Bills front office and it says, "Oh yeah, Bean was not having it. They couldn't find a contract extension agreement and they couldn't deal with it anymore."
Yeah,
It's like I
I
said,
think
odds are so low. Like, odds are really low. If that happens, I'm gonna go buy a lottery ticket, but
I think whatever happens, they're not gonna. I don't like. I've seen a lot of people propose mock trades and speculate about it. Trade either on draft day or before. I would just say get it out of your head. The idea of them trading Cook this year. I think no matter
mhm,
what,
Yeah.
they'll 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 either maybe come to an agreement or potentially franchise tag him and have him
yep,
play at 12 million next year. It kind
yep.
of did what the Giants did with Saquon Barkley, but
It
I
would
don't
make the most
I don't
sense.
I mean you'll probably see a back taken in the later rounds in which we can eventually um discuss right now because we were going to move into our draft talk anyways and get to our mock drafts. But yeah, I don't think
These are good.
I don't see a scenario where Bean trades um trades cooked this year. So anyway, speaking of drafts, we all prepared a mock draft. I guess we can just kind of go around the room one by one and just kind of each talk about our picks, our vision with this draft, and maybe afterwards we can just offer some feedback on each other's. But I'll start off.
Ben, do you have yours? Do you have yours with you? I can put it on the screen. You just have to send it to me.
Yeah, mine's I can send it to you right now.
Yeah, you just do that. You send it to me and I can just put it on the screen. And I think that would be easier than just going.
Yeah, I just sent it to our group chat. Yep.
Cool.
All right. Well, while he's
So we
doing
could start
that,
with one of ours. Do you want to go first, Connor? Or you want me to show mine?
pull mine up. I sent it to you.
All right. Here we go. This is Connor's mock draft. You can go through your mock draft.
I like how we're just
And,
completely cutting my face out here.
I like
What are you
that
trying to?
too.
What are you
I
trying
like
to
that
I
hide
don't
me?
like. I don't like it like that. But I mean, it shows.
Oh man, I was
I
having
could
some
take it
fun.
off if you want me to.
No, just move it if you can move it.
I can.
But
This is how it goes.
okay, well, this is going to be hilarious anyway. If all of our mock drafts are going to look like this, but
Well,
anyway,
just yours, I think.
well, all right then.
You did yours through PFF.
Duh. I always do mine through PFF, and
All
I
right,
don't really
explain
know
your
if.
draft.
Okay, so anyway, I figured I'd get aggressive. I didn't really get very, very aggressive. I traded up with Houston, up 5 spots to get James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee because
Uh-huh.
by the time I traded up, both Kenneth Grant Kenneth Grant was gone, and he's who I wanted. So I just said, okay, well, James Pierce slid this far down the board. Bet. When I got to 56, I was trying to get one of Trey Amos or Ezra Thomas, but
Mhm.
in a move that I'm sure would absolutely frighten everyone here, Trey Amos went to the Dolphins.
Ooh.
So I
Boo.
couldn't do anything about it. So I grabbed Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky. I'm gonna have to watch a little bit more of his tape because I kind of want to see why everybody's so high on him. As
Yeah,
I kept,
physical corner runs a
Mhm.
yeah, I heard physical.
runs a 4.2 40. So he's got speed. He can play zone. Like
Oh yeah, see that's big. I mean, if you can't get,
He ran a
uh,
4.240. I didn't know that.
yeah,
Dang.
he was the fastest at the NFL Combine, faster than your boy Matthew Golden. So Paul might have a new love child in this NFL
well,
draft.
what's interesting though
I
is
love Trey Amos, by the way.
we
Well,
know, but not more than Matthew Golden. Which, by the way, that brings me to my next point. After Shamar Turner in the second round with my other pick with my other second round pick, I immediately addressed wide receiver. It might not have been Matthew Golden, but it was still a Texas wide receiver who I'm sure Paul loves, and Isaiah Bond.
there's
So
a few things on Bond here. I'm going to say I really do love Bond. I think he's a great wide receiver, but over the last few days, I guess there's been some reports on off the field issues with
yeah,
Isaiah Bond.
I heard about those.
And like now at this point, I think the Bills like Isaiah Bond. Like I like Isaiah Bond. Like they
Yeah,
Paul
we
they
just
know
met
likes
you
within the
do.
speed. Paul just likes speed. Let's be honest.
Paul just likes
I do
Texas
like speed.
receivers.
I think Isaiah Bond would fit well in this Bills offense. Now finding out that he has off the field issues, I don't know how intrigued the Bills would be drafting Isaiah Bond without knowing maybe the full story. If his off the field
Mhm.
issues are resolved and they're completely fine and he's going to be entering the NFL, clean slate, you're coming to the NFL, you're coming to the Bills, you know our culture, and you're coming clean slate. Okay, draft Isaiah Bond. But Bean doesn't draft Isaiah Bond without knowing for sure his off the field issues are are fully resolved. But
Oh yeah,
if the Bills chose Isaiah Bond, I would be thrilled. But
but
continue.
I will now continue because I know for a fact that when we put these into a Twitter poll, I am going to get a lot of "Why are you not drafting a receiver in rounds 1 or 2" from a lot of people, and I'm going to
Mhm.
basically be like, "How about you watch the show and you read my bio, my little headline at the bottom underneath my name and Twitter handle? That's what we need in this draft, and you can quite see that I went and loaded up on defense. Right after Isaiah Bond, I double dipped at cornerback. It is not going to hurt considering that it is basically Christian Benford and nobody behind him. So I got
Right.
Zy Alexander out of LSU.
Okay.
Next, I went with Upton Stout out of Western Kentucky, the safety, because safety is definitely another very weak spot in this Bills roster. It's basically Taylor Rapp, Cole Bishop, and then DeMar Hamlin, who, I mean, yeah, he got extended, but I'm still considering safety is
We did
definitely,
sign. Was it Derek Forrest?
yes,
Yes.
I still would consider safety to be a bit of a question mark. So I grabbed him while he was there. And for my last fifth round pick, I went with best player available, which just
Mhm.
happened to be the running back from Rutgers. And I also am very happy it was a running back because that would have been my insurance pick in case James Cook decides that he's going to play one more year and then dip. After
Mhm.
that was just filling out defense to finish it off. Cody Simon out of Ohio State, and then Aleki Arnold out of USC, and that is my mock draft. I went completely heavy on defense, and somebody is going to hate it.
Not
I mean,
me.
I don't mind it. I mean, I think that was a solid mock draft. I
Do you
feel
have
like was it
my mock ready, Paul?
I do.
I'm happy I
Yes,
And
made
here's
because
that.
Ben's mock
if you
draft.
look at my mock, I kind of
Trey
did
Amos Cook.
something. Yes, I kind of did something similar. Except I ended up trading out of round one, and I know the 5th-year option is very advantageous. So yes, I agree, but I also wanted some more ammo to kind of
This is
get
wild.
more guys in the top 100. So I traded. Let me see.
I traded up.
Yes.
Ben traded down.
So I
That's
traded
amazing.
30. I think 170. Yeah, because once there's no 170 and 109 for picks 42 and 73. So I moved down 12 spots, picked up a third rounder, lost the early fourth, but still kept one of my other fourths. And I took Trey Amos. Trey Amos, obviously, who Paul's been gushing over the entire show.
Hmm.
And I would love him as a Buffalo Bill. I wouldn't even be mad if he's taken with pick 30. But for this
Okay.
exercise, I wanted some extra ammo to do to have more top 100 picks. So I went Amos, and like Connor said, I feel like safety still a need, especially with
Mhm.
Taylor Rapp being a massive question mark with his injury history. So I
Mhm.
got Andrew Makuba out of Texas, who would be a fantastic free safety. Does have some tackling concerns at times, but has great ball skills and instincts. And I think he would be a great fit in the Bills defense. Alfred Collins to add some beef on the inside of that defensive interior. He's just a big boy, 6'6", I believe, either 330 or 340 pounds. Let me just double check the official measurements, but he would be a perfect running mate to Ed Oliver. So he's 6'6", 320. Big boy, definitely can help plug. Or actually, no, 332. Yeah, so he is 330. So 6'6", 330. He's got some size to him. Could definitely help plug up the middle, help with that run defense, and give more single team opportunities for Ed Oliver. I took Kyle Williams,
Way.
the receiver from Washington State. Big fan of Kyle Williams. I've seen him go, I think, too low in a lot of mock drafts. So I think this is probably the sweet
Wait a
spot to where
minute.
you need to take Kyle Williams is somewhere in the third round. I mean, I wouldn't be mad if the Bills took him with pick 62. Because I mean, honestly, he may not even be there because his stock has been rising up. I took Fadil Diggs as
Diggs. You drafted a guy whose name is Diggs.
he's an edge
Haven't
rusher.
have we learned enough from the first Diggs? Now we're going to
And
draft another
I
Diggs.
don't believe he has a relation to the other Diggs
I know,
family.
but I had to say it. You
Yeah, that
drafted
was
a
that
Diggs.
that, that Diggs was kind of weak, Connor. And then I took Sean Dolick from Buffalo at linebacker, potential Matt Milano replacement. Mitchell
Yes.
Evans, tight end, because we do kind of need a tight end 3, although we do have Davidson. Is it Zach Davidson? Yeah, I think it's Zach Davidson in the pipeline. So I mean, we could maybe go without tight end, but I took Taj Brooks as a potential James Cook replacement. He had like 12 of the 15 games from this past season. He had like over 100 rushing yards, very explosive playmaker, only 5'10, but he's got some great burst and lateral movement ability. So he could really cook beyond this offensive line. And then I took an offensive guard just to add more depth because we did lose Tommy Doyle and Will Clapp this past offseason, and we didn't really. I guess we signed that one guy from the Texans, Kendrick Green, I think it was. But I mean, it never hurts to even add a guy to the practice squad. So this was my mock draft, as you could tell, heavily on the defensive side, but I did take some offensive players later on to fill some roster spots.
Yeah, I think I like that mock draft of yours. I think it hits every. Let me pull it back up. I think it hits every spot that the Bills need. I mean, running back. The question with with James Cook, is he even going to be here after this year? That's still up in the air. But I really am focusing on your first 4 picks because I feel like that's an important spot for the Bills. It's adding difference makers within the top 100 of your draft. And in this case, the Bills would have 4 picks in the top 100, and you have to hit on every single one of them. And I think Amos, Makuba, Collins, and Williams would fit in that category of hitting on every single one of your top 100 picks. So I feel like your top 4 picks are excellent. They're great. And I feel like the rest of the mock draft just flows with it, and brings in added depth in where it's need. Linebacker needs some added depth. Edge rusher is perfect for some added depth. And I think Diggs could eventually maybe emerge into a key rotational piece maybe in a year or two. And it just flows. It's great fluidity throughout the draft, and I think it's a really good mock draft. Any thoughts on it for yourself, Connor?
Lord have mercy, he drafted a guy with the last name Diggs. But anyway, no, in all seriousness, I am actually amazed that Ben traded down and I traded up. I feel like, Paul, your draft is the only one where you didn't trade anything. But no, the one thing I really love is that Trey Amos signing. Like, that, getting him at 42 is mind blowing. I'm amazed you pulled that off. What was the thought process of the teams above you to where he did not get drafted sooner? What was happening here? What was there a bunch of weed wafting around in the GM's office or what? Because that's wild. If Trey Amos was, if he was a Bill in the second round at that high a pick, I'd be ecstatic. Like, that'd be, oh my god. Unless you pull off getting Azare Thomas, and then at that point, oh, we're sold. We're absolutely sold.
Let's
But
let's see
Paul's
Paul's
turn.
Paul's mock draft before we wrap up with some more draft talk. Ooh, I
So-
like this one.
This is I cooked this one up.
Did you copy my
Man,
mock draft at all?
No,
I was gonna say,
I did
y'all
not. I did
basically.
not. No,
Why is mine the different one?
I
Well,
did one
that's
this
fitting.
morning. I did one this morning on the way to the dentist, and I was like, I don't like this one because I was going to use that one for
So
the
you
show.
did this
and
one
was like,
after the dentist, and you're all high on the Novocaine. So okay, but I still
So
see you're
like,
cooking.
so now, like a few hours before the show, I was like, okay, we're gonna make a different one because I was like, I didn't get the players that I thought the Bills should get, and I feel like we started off with 10 picks, and you obviously see here there's only 7. And I felt like you could get aggressive in your mock and in the draft cycle with 10 picks and still have really good draft capital. My mock here honestly looks a little bit similar to your mock draft, but it's a little different. We both had 4 top 100 picks, but how we got there was a little different. I thought keeping your first round pick, I really feel like it's important right now to have pick 30 because you're going to get a top end defensive tackle or defensive end, and Kenneth Grant, it was there, and you obviously will take Kenneth Grant. And then it gets interesting because Trey Amos goes anywhere from pick 32, could go anywhere from pick 30 to like pick 45. So it's a
God, you got him at
small-
44 too?
it's a very thin window with Trey Amos because once the
My God.
cornerback run starts, that's when you have to strike. And that's what I noticed in this mock was okay, the cornerback run is starting. The Bears didn't want to didn't want to be trade partners. So I was like,
They don't
okay,
want to trade for Trey.
Ah, that's funny.
we have to stop start the mock draft just a little bit to make sure Trey Amos was still there. So I decided to trade up for Trey Amos because I feel like he's a complete cornerback. He's great press man corner, and he also excels in zone. I think that's perfect for the Bills that you can have a cornerback switch from man to zone in an instant, and he can be on the field at all times. Then at 62, I decided to go Andrew Makuba. Again, same thing. I think the Bills, don't really need as much help in the safety position, but I feel like Andrew Makuba would just solidify the rest of the corner of the secondary room, and he would be an eventual starter next to Cole Bishop. And then Kyle Williams. I've been seeing a lot of Kyle Williams over the last
I'm
few
glad
weeks,
we have another fellow Kyle Williams truther among us.
and I'm starting to really like Kyle.
Kyle
I'm
Williams.
really am starting to like Kyle Williams because
Oh, yeah.
what
I'm
I'm gonna his stats versus man coverage is elite. 33 targets, no drops, 105 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns, and 17 point yards per catch. I mean, that's wonderful for a guy for the Bills that they need because he's a chunk play master and he can separate really well. All that combines to a perfect wide receiver for the Bills. He can line up in the inside. He can also play on the outside. He's just a really good wide receiver, well-rounded. Honestly, he could probably sneak into the back end of round 2, but I think I got him here right around in round 3. And then I rounded off the draft with edge, defensive tackle, and safety. Honestly, at 206, I was just taking best man available. I don't know if Wooler is going to make the Bills roster, but if he does, it's just great added depth. Peebles would be great defensive tackle depth. And then Jared Ivey. I really am starting to like Jared Ivey just a little bit more. And I think he would be a great addition to the edge room, adding more depth and a potential really good rotational player for the Bills in the edge room.
Oh, my
Thoughts on this
Lord.
draft, guys?
Why is it that it seems like Paul's is probably the most reasonable? Ben's is like, this is wild, but I can see it. Then there's mine, which is, this is wild. What is happening right now? And now that I think about it, I had to wait because, hold on. Paul, pull yours up again when you drafted Trey Amos. You drafted him at
44.
42. Okay. Yeah.
I was
42.
42.
Okay. So, yeah, you guys got him at 42 and 44.
I mean, he might go sooner than that. That's the thing.
That's
But
what
you
I'm
never
thinking.
know with these simulators because, like, you do one simulator, one guy goes here, another guy goes there. Like, it just depends what the
Yeah.
NFL GMs have as
Mhm.
their boards because not every GM obviously has the same board
Exactly.
in general. And
And
it's
if you pull mine back up, you'll see that my second round pick was at 56, which
yes,
makes more sense as to why Trey Amos was not there. Because in
correct.
that one, I was
I mean,
thinking about it earlier, and I was like, "Why is Trey Amos
I think
already gone?"
I
And then
think
I went
either way,
56.
I think Trey Amos goes in the top 40. So whether he's
Mhm.
there at 42 or 44, it might be 39, it might be 38, 33, etc. Like he's gonna go. There's gonna be a run on corners eventually. I think
Mhm.
we can all agree as a consensus that um sorry that Jolly Barron will not be there either way. at pick 30. If he does, that's a miracle, and you're running the cards up. But we have a couple more things to talk about for the draft, and then we have some other Bills news or just general NFL news that we'll discuss for the final couple minutes of the show. Out of the 10 picks, should the Bills use their ammo to trade up for any specific position? I think it just depends on the player. If there's someone like just a stud on defense that's falling and it's somewhat reasonable, I say go and get them. But
Oh,
I
hey,
also am
I
not
did in my mock.
depleting. I'm not depleting my draft capital because we have so many picks, and I think this team needs multiple impact players. So I don't want to I saw this one guy make a mock where traded up for Travis Hunter, and that's all fine and dandy.
What?
But with getting Travis Hunter, we basically gave up next year's first, a second next year, and
Mhm.
both of our second round picks. So I don't
No
want
way.
to pick
No way.
Travis Hunter and then not have another pick to 109 because we need
Mhm.
at least 2, maybe 3 starters out of this draft.
Yep.
And that's the goal of the top 3 picks in my mind. I don't think there's a specific player. I think if it's a defensive stud that would just is a can't miss prospect that would make this defense better, I'm gonna throw some chips in, but I'm not putting all my chips on the table.
Exactly. You can't. This is not the draft to put all your chips on the table. No way. There is not a player that you can look at and be like, we got to have this guy,
Mhm.
because you also have to remember every GM knows what the other team's GMs need. It is no secret right now that every single GM probably knows that the Bills need cornerback help above all
Yeah.
else. So if you tried to trade up for a guy like, I'm not going to say Travis Hunter, that would just be insane. But
Yeah.
say you had an opportunity where you were thinking about trying to trade up to get one of those cornerbacks like Trey Amos, Azare Thomas, any team you try to trade with is going to raise the price deliberately because they know the Bills need a cornerback. So you can't go into this draft throwing all your chips on the table for one guy, because there is no one guy that can change an entire defense. Anybody that says Travis Hunter, we're not talking about Jags fans here. All the Jags fans have been saying that everywhere I've talked to.
Mhm.
Travis Hunter will change his defense. Yeah, all right. You're going to run him into the ground in 3 weeks because he's going to insist on playing both running or a cornerback and wide receiver. He's going to be burnt and
And hot
not
take,
get
I,
burnt.
I I think it might be debatable whether he's the best receiver, but I don't think he's the best corner in this draft. And I don't think for the
Oh, no,
Bills
he's not.
needing primarily corner that they put all their chips in on maybe a corner 1, maybe he's a corner 2,
Mhm.
but I think you're better. There's a better bang for your buck getting a guy like Amos and then getting a receiver later. Because, like you said, you can't really play him on both sides of the ball because you're going to run him into the ground. Paul, is there a
Mhm.
position on defense we should trade up for?
I mean, if you look at the 2 mock drafts, I mean, all 3 of our mock drafts, I mean, I think corner might be the position where you
Right.
trade up for. I mean, i- you got to really gauge
I
the
think
run
there's
on
enough,
corner.
right. And I think there's enough defensive tackles where you don't get a Kenneth
Mhm.
Grant round 1, fine. You get a Darius Alexander or a Tyleek Williams potentially round 2. You
Yeah.
also got Alfred Collins. Like there's other guys. Now, another position which Matt Perino, shout out Matt Perino, um he gave a couple interesting names that the Bills could potentially trade for at wide receiver, and these guys are by no means quote unquote available, but he kind of was just throwing out ideas. Chris Olave, Jordan Addison.
Oh, my
And I
God.
would love either of them, but that would probably
Yeah.
require significant draft capital. And
Mhm.
then it leads to the question, should the Bills draft a receiver or trade for one? And honestly, I am more inclined to the draft just because of getting that rookie contract. If you get one of those guys, you're going to have to pay them around $20 million a year and hand out
Yeah.
a new contract. And you didn't like the Diggs draft idea. Well, we do
Hey,
have
that was a
our
joke, okay?
our history of trading for Minnesota receivers hasn't necessarily ended well. Maybe Addison is different, but we do have a history of trading for wide receivers for
Wait,
Minnesota.
wait. You're talking about trading for wide receivers?
Yes.
We will give you whatever you want for George Pickens. Get this diva
No,
out of
no,
Pittsburgh right
no,
now.
No.
no. The Bills do not need George Pickens.
No,
They need
absolutely not.
they need a quick separator. And if I was to trade for a receiver, it actually wouldn't be either of them. I would like a New Orleans receiver, but it's Rashid Shaheed. I think him
He's
Oh, yeah,
really good.
yeah.
with
I really
his
think people underrate him.
with
He's
with
really
his
good.
speed and big playability, like he would just take off the top of the field. And with Josh Allen's arm, that would be almost like the greatest show on turf 2.0. But I like the Kyle Williams idea. I think you can get him third, fourth round, maybe.
Mhm.
If you have to do a little bit of trade up, you have to do a little bit of a trade up. But like you said already, we have the assets. So maybe we kind of do both. Maybe we trade, but it's not for a wide receiver, but it's for a draft pick to draft a wide receiver. We trade up somewhere into the third round. We use the fourth round and a couple other picks, maybe say, because there are teams that don't have that many draft picks this year. I don't have it in front of me. I know Minnesota is one of them.
Yeah, they have like 4.
Maybe Houston is another one. Like there are teams that really don't have any capital, and we're the
Mhm.
opposite. We have a lot of capital. So
Oh
I
yeah.
mean,
Right.
I mean, in all reality, the Bills probably don't have room on the roster. I mean, they had a couple spots open up because of the suspensions, but there's probably not roster spots for 10 rookies on this
Oh
team.
yeah. No.
Like,
No.
Yeah,
No way.
honestly, maybe 6 to 8. So if you only come out with, even if we go from 10 picks to somehow 6 or 7, I still think we can get a lot of good contributors and depth with those picks. So I'm still inclined for the draft. If Bean's able to pull something off, which was an absolute heist, I will be fine with that. But I also still am a little concerned with Olave's concussion history, and I don't
Yeah.
want to trade for a lemon. I mean, I like the Addison idea more, but with Minnesota having a quarterback on a rookie contract, they can afford to pay 2 receivers more than these
Mhm.
other teams can. The Bengals are somehow paying 2 receivers and a quarterback, but the Vikings have 4 more years of JJ McCarthy, so they could structure their
Mhm.
contracts where they can have Addison for, say a 4-year deal, and then they can, eventually figure out what to do with him once um, they pay JJ McCarthy and that's even if JJ McCarthy ends up turning out. Maybe they draft another quarterback in McCarthy to bust, which does give them a new timeline with these great receivers. So I'm not sure if Minnesota's in any rush to trade them, but real quickly as we wrap up, the NFL announced that they will be completely taking over Christmas Day from the NBA, and there will be 3 Christmas Day games. And guys, what are your thoughts on the Bills potentially having a home day game on Christmas? Now, remember, Christmas falls on a Thursday this year, so it
Mhm.
would be like just having another Thursday night game. And I mean, if you look at the Bills' record under McDermott on Thursday nights, they play great on Thursdays. I think a lot of people have PTSD from how those Thanksgiving Day games ended,
Right.
Oh boy.
just with those major injuries on defense. But I mean, it can happen any day of the week. And I mean, between another international game or a Christmas Day game, I would actually rather have a Christmas Day game because you don't really have to account for the travel and jet lag.
Yeah.
Yes, I know it's annoying to play on a holiday, but I'm kind of warming up to the idea of a Bills home game. Just imagine
Ooh,
Christmas is wrapping up.
Christmas, yeah.
After Christmas dinner or whatever, the Bills
Mhm.
have a nighttime game on Christmas night.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Last year in the Ralph with the snow coming down and the elements, like kind of like how that Saturday night was. I'm just imagining how much aura there was at that stadium when we played Miami on that Saturday night. Like
Oh
that would
man.
just be a great
Mhm.
scene. And I think we have some great potential matchups, whether it's a divisional matchup, Baltimore, Cincinnati, maybe Philadelphia, Kansas City. I mean, even Tampa Bay. How fun would it be to have Baker versus Josh on
Mhm.
Christmas night?
Wait. Christmas night, and you're going to talk about the Ratbirds, but you're not going to talk about going over to Acrisure to play Pittsburgh in an environment that would be much more fun on Christmas night?
No, I'm talking about the Bills were the host on Christmas night.
Okay, okay, yeah.
Yeah, the
If you're
Bills,
hosting, okay.
Yeah, the
Bills
Bills
would probably
hosting.
host on
Yes,
Christmas. I
Okay,
feel
the
like
Bills are hosting it. I'm just throwing out teams we could potentially play. You have the divisional matchups. You have the mark.
Wait, I got it. That Ravens idea is cooking, but
I did
it's
mention
got to be
Tampa.
Miami. It's got to be
Miami
Miami.
wouldn't be bad either. What about Tampa? That would be
That-
cinema too.
It would be because you're taking a team from Florida and you're throwing them into the abyss in the winter. They're going
Yes,
to suffer, and
especially
it's
in the Western New York elements.
last
yep.
year around Christmas, it was like -6 degrees against
Oh
the
yeah, they would
49ers,
die.
literally right around Christmas time. So it was like that was actually New
Any
Year's.
team from
Actually.
Florida is going to just shrivel and die in that kind of cold. I promise.
Now, if you're going to go, if you had to choose between a Christmas game and international game, I feel like a Christmas game
I'm choosing
would
Christmas.
suit the Bills
Mhm.
better
Yep.
Yep.
because there's the potential of going on the road to Dublin against the Steelers because the Steelers do have that Dublin game.
Me and Cotter, our last experience playing in Ireland did not end well, so I think we'll
No, I
pass
don't want
on
to
that.
think about that. We got beat by Tech, Georgia Tech. I don't want to think about
Yeah.
playing in
Yeah.
Ireland ever again.
Maybe don't bring that aura over there.
I don't
No.
want to. I don't want to bring that aura over there. Period. And I don't want to have to play in Ireland either. Period. I
But
know there's a lot of cultural significance as it pertains with the Steelers side of things, and they'll most likely be playing in Ireland. I don't want the Bills playing over there. Point blank.
yeah, I feel like Christmas night, I mean, if you want to do the second game of the night, or you want to do that prime Thursday night game, whatever, I feel like whatever you want to do, I feel like that would be a cool way to, it would be a cool way to remember what a night game at the. I mean, I'm going to call it the Ralph because that's what it is. I'm going to call it the
Yeah,
Ralph because it's the final.
I
It's the
called it the
final
Ralph
season of
too.
the stadium. It deserves to be called its OG name. And
I think that's like the perfect send off too for
right.
the Bills Stadium. Like, let's end it kind of on a high note. Like, it's the last opportunity the old stadium can host a holiday game, so I
Mhm.
think it would be the perfect ending to a legendary ballpark.
Reverse retro jerseys, possibly,
Ooh,
or
maybe red
even just
helmet for you red
red
helmet
helmets,
people,
wear
Yes.
or
that on a Christmas night. Yeah, to
standing
bring back the
buffalo,
standing
baby. Yeah.
buffalo just for, even if it's just for a game and that make it that game, you bring back, some of the ways to honor the past of this old stadium. Send the stadium off in a celebratory way, and I think that's a good way to do it. I feel
Yep.
like that's something maybe I wouldn't think that the Bills are like calling the commissioner about like, hey, give us a Christmas night game, at the stadium. But
Wait,
if it
wait,
happens to be, I
wait.
feel like it would be a great
You know what would make
night
it even
to
better? Hold on,
celebrate the
Paul.
stadium.
You know what would make it even better? You're playing the Dolphins in Buffalo
Clinch the
on
division.
Christmas night to clinch the AFC East.
I was just about to say that. Yep.
Man,
Just like last year.
that'd be the ultimate aura.
Or the
Oh,
Patriots too, because
that any of them, even if it's the
Diggs
Jets.
going there on
Oh,
Christmas
oh
night,
no,
and the
oh
fans
no.
throw. I'm not
Wait,
encouraging it, but the
wait, wait,
fans will
wait.
be throwing snowballs
I
at
got a
them.
better idea.
Yeah.
I got a better idea for you, Ben. Imagine if this was the game that not only did the Bills clinch the AFC East, but it was also the game that if the Patriots lost, they were eliminated from playoff contention.
That would
That
be.
would
I
be
was just
even
thinking about that.
better.
That would be cinema.
Oh, and one last little tiny note before we end the show. They just showed that I don't know if you guys remember Braxton Berrios, Dolphins legend Braxton Berrios, but
Legend.
he has decided to wear the number 17 in Houston.
No aura for him.
No, yeah,
The
no
only
aura. Don't. How much like Josh Allen is he trying to be? Come on now.
I don't know if anyone saw this too, but John Spytek, the Raiders GM, was on Sirius XM radio today. He was
Mhm.
interviewed, and he said his son said he'll disown him if they don't take Ashton Genty. So you
Oh my
might want
God.
to pencil in Ashton Genty for all your mock drafts. But that should wrap up the show. Next week
Ben,
will have,
torpedo bats, really quick. Do you want torpedo bats?
yes, hit as many nukes as possible. Torpedo bats are awesome. Next week we have Dean.
Yes.
So next week we have NFL draft expert Dean joining the program. But other than that, like, follow, subscribe. The show on all audio platforms. Follow us on Twitter, and as always, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.